And this is the first time they're meeting in bid'a sinin, which is anywhere from 6 to 9 years. So it's been almost a decade, half a decade to a decade, and they haven't seen each other. The last time they saw each other, they were both imprisoned. And Prophet Yusuf ﷺ told him, hey, mention me to your master when you go. Maybe they can help me. I'm wrongfully imprisoned after all, right? And the guy didn't help him. So the very first time he sees him again, it's many years later, and the man is not even offering an explanation for why he didn't help him or anything. He's just saying, hey, I have one more thing to benefit from you. Like, I need more help. Right? How are you feeling? Let's say you're in Prophet Yusuf ﷺ's position. Years have passed, and this guy comes, the guy who you helped, he comes and asks for more help. I need you to help me interpret this dream. What's your honest response? Anger. All right. What else? Yeah, get out of my face. Right? You're not going to help. How many of you would help? Genuinely, right? We're talking about being a muhsin, being a good person. Does that apply here? Are you obviously no? You're not. That's like going too far with the concept of being a muhsin. We said Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, Allah mentions it multiple times in this very surah about he's min al muhsinin, being a muhsin, being a perfectionist for the sake of Allah, obviously without any obsessive aspect. So Allah gave us the example of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. If you want to be a muhsin, follow his example, study his story and follow his lead. But let's be clear, being a muhsin, being a person who always looks to do good, it doesn't mean you got to just offer good all the time and not get anything in return and be taken advantage of and so on and so forth. However, did Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam help when the guy came? He helped. He gave him the very detailed definition of the dream, the interpretation. He told him, you're going to the 7 lean cows. So the king saw the cows, and we explained it before, but just a very brief. He said, you're going to have, this means that Egypt, all the millions of people here, we're going to have 7 years of good harvest. Then they're going to be followed immediately by 7 years of terrible harvest, like drought and famine. And we need to be eating, during the 7 years of good harvest, which is now, we need to be saving most of our crops. We need to be eating as if we're poor and broke, as if we have nothing, which is the hardest thing to do, right? We have abundance. So you always want to go seek more abundance. Like you say, hey, come on, life is good. Eat as much as you like. He said, no, unless we have those austerity measures during the good times, when we are actually broke, we'll be in deep trouble. And we're going to have 7 years. It's not going to be, 1 year, we'll figure it out. 7 years straight. Then he said, the final year, the 15th year, will be full of blessing, and the crops will come back and it'll be great. So he gave him a 15-year prediction based on this dream of the king. So he explained the whole dream in detail. So he did act on ihsan. But we just all described, we all agreed here, if it were me, I wouldn't explain the dream. I wouldn't help him. So how do we understand this? Because Allah's not telling us just anytime anybody needs your help, always and forever, you always just offer it. No, that's too simplistic of an understanding of ihsan. But Prophet Yusuf ﷺ still offered that. And you notice in the ayat, did he ask for anything in return? Nothing at all. He didn't even say like he said before, اذكرني عند ربك. He didn't say again, hey, this time mention me. Because he said it already 7 years ago. You think like, if it were me and you would say like, please, come on, this time don't forget me. He said, he didn't even ask that. He said, here's your interpretation of your dream. Ma'as salama. So what are you thinking? So there's a greater good here. It's too urgent for him to be thinking just about his own benefit. Because this is, if they don't act upon his command or his advice, people will die. All right? Because of famine and 7 years, and they have to start preparing from now. All right, that's fair. And that is mentioned in the tafsir, that he was prioritizing the greater good, even though the وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةً وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةً. Allah mentions the trait of the people of Medina, which is a praised trait of the believers, is that they will prioritize other people's needs, even if they have a need as well, even for that same exact thing. And actually, I read a story that really touched my heart a few days ago. There was in the prisoner exchange between the Zionist, evil Zionist entity and the noble people of Palestine recently, there was a man who was, I don't know what criteria these shayateen used to allow people to be on the list, but there was a man who ended up being on the list. A Palestinian man who's been in prison for 18 years, in fact, specifically 18 years. So he made it to the list of people to be released this week. Okay, imagine how you're feeling. 18 years, you're tossed behind bars, and you make it to the list of to be released, to finally go back to your family. Of course, he was tossed behind bars, dhulman, oppressively, no crime committed, the usual. And then this man requested for his name to be removed from the list and to put somebody else there. So he said his sentence was 18 years and it's been 17 years, and I think there's 2 months left in his sentence. So he said, what a waste. What a waste for me to be put on the list of hostages to be freed. I'd rather just wait 2 months and get somebody else who has like another 10-year sentence or 20 or whatever. I'd rather they get on the list and get freed now, because they'd have to wait the whole 20 years if they don't make it to future lists. But for myself, I'll just wait 2 months and I'll be freed, inshallah. Now I ask you, would you be able to have done that? To postpone your freedom after 18 years almost? وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. They prioritize other people over themselves, even if they also have the same exact need. And that is a تطبيق عملي. That is a putting faith in action. You know, that ayah, you know, we see it in our modern day. There are heroes in our era. May Allah Ta'ala accept from him. May Allah free him and give him and his family relief. And they actually did. They switched him out for somebody else. So he's actually going through with it now. May Allah Ta'ala grant him freedom and relief and remove him from the hands of these shayateen. So that, alhamdulillah, that was so powerful, such a touching story that is real and happening right now as we speak. So these stories don't just exist in history, they exist in the present as well. So let's go back to here. So you said that your reasoning or your thinking, your thought process of Yusuf alayhi salam is that he's like, this when he heard the dream, he immediately read, because he's an expert. Allah allamahu ta'wil al-ahadith. Allah gave him this wisdom and this knowledge. So he immediately acknowledged, just like we said before, when you're an expert in the field, you can look at the diagnosis and say, oh my God, you immediately recognize it, you can read the data. So as soon as he heard the dream, he immediately knew this is a top level, like a dignitary or a king or somebody on a high level had this dream. It wasn't this wine pourer having the dream. This is clearly a dream from somebody in charge. And this dream is a big deal. It affects all of Egypt, so I can't just prioritize my own needs. What else? What else is going through your head? Well, let me ask you this, and then I'll let you guys talk amongst a group. These are his options. This is what I thought. If I'm in Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam's position now, and this man came to me and said, hey, help us, there's this big dream, the king, I overheard the king talk about it, etc. He has the following 5 options. Number 1, he could refuse to help. Right? That's what some of you said that you'd do. All right, number 2, he could, out of revenge and like how angry he is at this guy, he could have just given a fake interpretation. Like, oh, you know what? I'll get you in trouble now. You know, go back and tell him this fake dream, and then you get some in trouble, right? He could have done that. That's an option. Number 3, he could have withheld he could have said, look, I know the answer, and I'm sure of because remember he said, I'm gonna give you the interpretation before dinner comes, before dinner is served. He was so confident. He knew for a fact what he was gonna tell them. And then, so he could have said, look, I know the answer, but I'm not gonna give it to go tell the king. You guys gotta give me a reward first. You gotta free me from prison because I was here wrong. Then I'll give you the answer. That's an option too, right? Some of you guys may have considered that option. Sure, I might try that. Use some leverage. I have value. They want something from me. So let me get something from them. It's fair is fair. It's a trade. Okay. Option number 4. He could have offered the value first. So instead of withholding it and saying, look, once you free me, I'll tell you. Or let me talk to the king and I'll tell him directly. He could have said, no, I'll give you the option, the interpretation. And then he could have one more time asked, وَذْكُرْنِي عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ. Like, hey, now that I've given you this value, just mention me one more time. Mention me to the king. You didn't do it the first time. It's been 7 years. Mention me this time, please. Right? He could have requested something. Basically, offered the value and requested something in exchange. That's option number 4. And option number 5 is what he ended up choosing, which is offer the interpretation and ask for nothing whatsoever. Isn't that what Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam chose? He offered the full detailed interpretation, did not leave anything out, and said, thank you, ma'asalama. I'm asking 0 from you. So the 5 options he has, you listening? Because I'm going to make you guys go into groups now. Number 1, he could have refused to help at all. Number 2, he could have given a fake, something petty, revenge-minded, a fake interpretation to get this guy in trouble or whatever, just refusal to help. Number 3, he could have withheld the interpretation and said, I'll tell you, I know the answer, I'll tell you when you guys help me out. Or number 4, he could have given the answer, but said, hey, and then asked for something in exchange. Can you guys free me in that case? Now that I've helped you, can you free me? And then number 5, he could have, which he did do, just offer the interpretation, offer what they're requesting, and ask for a 0, and that's it. That's the end of this conversation. All right, so he chose option number 5. So I want you guys to get into groups of 4. Let's talk for 2-3 minutes, and I want you to discuss these options. What would you have done and which is, what are the wisdoms, what should be done here? What's a good option to take? All right? Go ahead. Get into groups of 4. If you don't know each other, introduce your names first, and then have this conversation. Bismillah. Bismillah. All right, Bismillah. So let me hear a voice, some thoughts. Yeah, your group wants to talk? Go ahead. They have good answers? Oh. Oh, okay. Well, no, guys, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us over and over in this surah that Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam is min al-muhsinin, he is the epitome, or he's a great example of high quality behavior, al-ihsan. He's giving us a roadmap to be a muhsin yourself. So the character of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam is observed throughout this story. And you gotta learn and adopt and emulate this character. So this is what we're trying to do now. If you're in his situation, we know what he ended up doing, but we already know, I know that I would have been inclined to one of the other 5 options. But we're trying to study now, why did he do his option? We already established a moment ago that he didn't help them just to help. That's too simplistic. Remember, we just said, you're not obligated as a Muslim to just keep helping people who take advantage of you. That's too simplistic. There's got to be more to it here. So I want to know why he offered them help with asking for nothing in return despite being stuck in prison, right? So let's hear some thoughts, yeah. So the refusing to help was out of the equation. Number 2 was giving a fake interpretation. You guys said, no, we eliminate those 2. But why?
It's not a behavior of a prophet.
No, I'm saying, so yes, a prophet is high behavior. What about yourself? If I'm in that situation, many of us already said, honestly, I would refuse to help. That's what we started with. I know you're starting to reconsider now, but when I first asked this question, most of you said, I would have refused to help. But you guys said, no, that's a silly option. So you guys rejected that option. So let me stop here and just say, why is that a bad option? The first one, refusing to help. Yes. Okay, that is a very good answer. Do you guys hear that over here? By refusing to help, option number 1, which many of us, that was our initial thought. Like, hey, you come here, after 7 years, I don't see your face, and you come here and ask me for more help. Then I tell you to go, "Udhkurni 'inda rabbik," to mention me. You didn't help me nothing, and I finally see you, you're well fed, you've been living like a king, and I'm here in prison. Your first initial impulse is tell him, get out of here. You're lucky I don't kill you, right? That's your first impulse. And the thing is, our sister mentioned something very important. But then that's it. Then he leaves. He goes, all right, fine. You could be like, I refuse to help. Or you could say, I don't know. Leave me alone. And then he leaves and that's it. Someone came knocking on your door from the king. And instead of override your initial impulse and say, okay, I'm a little bit annoyed or a lot annoyed. But give me a second. Let me see how there's some strategy. There could be some value here. But if you give in to your first impulse, very often it's the wrong one. Okay? This is very important as a believer, as a muhsin, as a wise person. Allah says in the Quran that Allah gave Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam wisdom. You're stuck in prison. You got to take anything that comes your way could be an option or an opportunity. Refusing to help, khalas, this guy goes away and who knows, another 7 years before another opportunity comes your way, if it does. Got it? That's a very important lesson. There's a second lesson here too. Let's say he didn't just pretend I don't know. I don't know. If he says I don't know, then that's it. The guy goes away. But if he says no, I know, but I'm not going to tell you. Then the guy goes and tells the king, yeah, the guy knows, but he doesn't want to tell us. What's the king going to do? He's going to punish him. He's gonna, all right, bring this guy out. And then punish him, torture him until he gets the answer. And then now he forces the answer, and then the king punishes and says, I've got the answer and I'm not going to help you because of what you did, this little game that you played. Right? So it's just strategically the terrible idea, even though it's your initial impulse. So beware, your emotional impulse doesn't always help you. So go ahead, continue your thoughts. Exactly, yes. The second one is it's petty, it's also impulsive for no reason. Okay. Yes. Jazakumullah khair. All right, so I'll stop you there because I want to hear from more people. Jazakumullah khair. Sisters, thoughts? Yes. Of course, yes. Jazakum khair. The highest level of ihsan is what Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam ultimately did. Obviously, Allah gave us, He told us He's an example of wisdom and an example of ihsan. But now we're trying to decipher why, because there was strategy in what he did. So our sister said, I would also consider option number 4, and I might have done that one, which is to offer the value, but to ask for a reward, or ask them, mention me this time. Tell them that you got it from me. So maybe, and then tell them, I'm wrongfully imprisoned. Maybe this opens the door for me, right? Okay. Any other thoughts? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So yes. So I love your point, and this is why I want a lesson for us all here. Okay. So we've already established, excuse me, that offering the help with asking for nothing, not even presenting a request, is the best option. And here's why. It's the most strategic. Number one, we said yes, al-ihsan, helping others, but that's you're not always obligated to help others, especially when you're in deep need, right? Unless there's to avoid being taken advantage of. In this case, this was actually the best option. And like we said, like our brother mentioned earlier, if he had withheld the answer and said, listen, I'll only say it, bring me to the king and I'll say it to him directly, that probably would have backfired, because you're just a prisoner. Like, the king's gonna be like, excuse me, the prisoner wants to come talk to me. Who's this guy? And then it might backfire. It's just not a wise use of your value. You have value to offer, but you have to know how to present it. It was a bad presentation. It was not a wise chess move in that regard. So the fourth option, which our sister said, is, I would consider that too, which is offer them the value and say, hey, please mention me or try to free me. The problem with that one is that as a prisoner, you're already in a position of need. And the king is already expecting, oh, what are they going to ask? Like, that's when you're higher up, when you're wealthy, when you're of high status or high leadership, people are always requesting your time. People are always requesting your expertise, requesting your help, and they always want something in return. So the logic when you deal, and this is for us in life, when you deal with somebody who's of high status, high this, high that, and this is what the scholars of the past, before they became scholars, this is how they operated. And Ammar al-Shukri, Hafidhahullah, he always mentions this, is that you be in the service of your scholar. So that he gives the example of the scholars before they became scholars. They go and be the apprentice or the servant of the sheikh, because they really, really see high value in this scholar. I want to learn from him as much as possible, but I can't just keep following him around asking questions and just asking, give me, give me, give me, give me. How do I make sure I get a personal relationship with him? How do I make sure I get ilm for the sake of Allah? But I also want to get close to this person who's providing me quite a bit of value. Offer value. And Ammar al-Shukri mentioned this example more than once. He said he did this. May Allah bless him. When many of the mashayikh had come back from Medina, maybe 10, 15 years ago, he had tech skills, computer savvy and this and that, and he would offer them, hey, I'll organize your emails, or I'll make sure that they get forwarded this way or the other, or I'll set up a Twitter for you, or that, and just straight up offer, ask nothing in return. But the very fact that he's in the service of the sheikh and in a personal relationship with him, and can attend all his lectures and benefit from him a lot, benefited him in quite a huge way. And that is how the scholars of the past, by the way, operated. So this applies, by the way, not just in ilm and sheikhs. This applies in many dunya metrics as well. Business and leadership and high value individuals, whatever. Now I know some people might think, oh, I don't want to be sleazy with that. I don't want to be always looking for something, some benefit. We're not saying to be sleazy. We're not saying to hide your intentions. There's no hiding of the intentions. Say, hey, listen, I'm not here to just ask you. I knock on your door, and I'm not here to just ask you to benefit me. I'm here to provide a service. And yeah, there's certainly benefit in it for me. I'm going to be an apprentice of somebody who's extremely high value in my field. There's nothing sleazy whatsoever. Your intentions are clear. You're not hiding anything, but there's a mutual benefit. So this is a way, you have to keep that in mind. Especially when you're dealing with people who are constantly requested, you have to strategize sometimes and say, no, I'm not going to put in a request, because then I just get put into the pile with everybody else, and I don't want to be presented that way. Even though I certainly have a request, or I certainly want to benefit from this high value individual, I'm going to present it a different way with no trickery involved. But I want them to see the value that I have to offer, and then I'll get 10 times more value. Very important. You understand this? I saw a hand, yes. Yep. Huge. They see the value that I have to offer. And they see the dignity of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, which is a recurring theme in this story. He said, رَبِّ السِّجْنُ أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا يَدْعُونَنِي إِلَيْهِ. Oh Allah, it's more beloved to me to remain in prison than to go to prison. He wasn't in prison yet. Than to do the zina that they were asking. I'd rather go to prison. Very few people have that level of dignity. Let's be frank, right? So his dignity comes up over and over. And in this case, he said, listen, I asked this guy before, he didn't help me out. I'm not going to put myself in that position to ask him again. Here's your dream, ma salama. And Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam also was very wise. He, like you mentioned, Yusuf, he understood that when the king, first of all, again, if you're a software engineer, if you're someone in the medical field, someone puts a chart in your way, and you read all these random, to the rest of us, this is just random letters and numbers. This much milliliters and the numbers and letters. Like, what is this? Might as well be Chinese. But to the person who's an expert, they're like, I know exactly what this says. And when I give the answer, the person who had the dream, the king in this case, is going to very clearly know that this was an expert answer. And there's no way he's going to sit on that. So Yusuf alayhi salam was thinking 3 steps ahead, like in chess. He said, as soon as this guy goes back with this very precise interpretation to the king's going to say, wait a second, where did this come from? My best experts couldn't give me something like this. I want to know who said this. And that's it. It's going to come to him. Let the value come to you. You present value, you present your skill set, and you expect with confidence that value will come to you. So there's 2 things here. When we've already established this, when Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam first got to prison, he was helping everybody left and right, even the guy who expected was going to die in 3 days, right? He helped him with ihsan, asking nothing in return. So we've already established that he helps people who can't help him back. However, when there was somebody who could help him back, he said, go mention me to your Lord. So he didn't leave off opportunities to be of value to him. So there's 2 things. You go in with the correct intention. You help people without expecting something in return, often, when the opportunity presents itself. But also, you recognize that your expertise will speak for itself. And it will provide you value. There's no contradiction here. As a Muslim, you do ihsan without expecting anything in return, without demanding, or you're only doing it for something in return. However, it's okay to acknowledge strategically that as I do ihsan, as I showcase my talents and my skills, logically things will come my way, opportunities will come my way, and it's okay for me to grab them. It makes sense? So if you're great at what you do, whatever skill or talent or education you have, if you're not getting the opportunities that should be presenting themselves to you, go and present yourself. Go if you're an excellent coder, but you don't have the connections, you don't have the resume, you don't have this, you have that. So go produce something, code something, make something that people can't deny, and present it. Try knock on this door, knock on that door, but you have to showcase your talent. If you're a designer, if you're this, if you're creative, if you have your handiwork, whatever it is, people don't owe you attention. You need to go and broadcast your skill set, and with such confidence that eventually a door that you knock on will open, or eventually the free value that you provided for others will catch the eye of exactly who needs to see it, and it makes its way back to you. That is how you reconcile between being a muhsin, which you always offer to do good, but also there's nothing wrong with you wanting it to come back to you and to be strategic with it as well. Yes.
Also, choose the fifth option, which is the obvious one for Prophet, that he knows that him getting out of the prison or not is in the hands of Allah. It's not because that he's interpreting the dream to the king or not, because the king might hear the interpretation and follow it without even asking him to get out of.
Yes. Well, the thing is about that is I like what you're saying. The only issue is that earlier, a few ayat ago, he said, "Udhkurni 'inda rabbik." He asked the man, hey, when you're freed, you're going to go to the king and you're going to serve him. Your dream means you're going to go serve him wine. When you're there, mention me. Tell him there's a young man who's wrongfully imprisoned. So he did not have any problem with seeking help. So it's not against tawakkul to seek help. But when that strategy failed, and Yusuf alayhi salam was a highly dignified man, he was not going to ask the guy a second favor. This guy didn't help me the first time. I'm going to put myself in a weaker position with him again? No, khalas. Tawakkaltu ala rabbi. Also, he knew that his expertise would speak for itself. He knew that when the king hears this, there's no way he's going to sit on it quiet. He's going to say, bring me this young man. So this it happened. He was so confident in his skill set that it actually paid off. And like you said, when you do ihsan, you have the tawakkul and the patience. You say, look, if it doesn't work out, I try another thing, and then another thing, and another thing. Right? You think for those 7 years he wasn't helping everybody who he could? You think he hasn't been trying other strategies as well? He did. Allah decided that it would take this long for it to play out, right? And he would be needed at the most opportune moment for all of Egypt. Yes, brother.
Separate from being the muhsin to someone who didn't pass on his request to the king, he now knows that there's going to be 7 years of bad harvest soon, and he needs to prepare, otherwise millions of living Egypt will die.
Yes.
So there's also that duty of being a muhsin.
Yep.
You can save the millions of people if they're prepared for the famine.
Jazakallah khair. So similar to what our brother mentioned earlier, which is he prioritized the needs. He said, this is urgent. I have to give him this answer because they have to get started ASAP, right? So this is just some interesting perspective about how to be a muhsin. It's okay to look out for your own interests. In fact, you should. There will be times when you need to present your skills and your talents and expect nothing in return, but know that it's Allah's, the way that Allah made this dunya work, that the more you have ihsan, the more people gravitate towards you, as we said a couple of weeks ago. It's just how life works. Now, if you're not willing to give it a try, it's because you don't have it in you to be a muhsin. We talked about that. When you are a person who every time you're given a task, your mind goes immediately to how can I do the bare minimum of this task and still say that I did it? Right? Your parents tell you go sweep outside. Your brain is saying, what is the bare minimum amount of steps I have to take to do the bare minimum so I could say to my parents, well, I swept. That you got nothing on me, right? That is not the mindset of a Muslim, right? We said that's a mindset of a different group who just want to say that I did it. As long as I can technically say I did it, then that's it. Leave me alone. I'm a lawyer. No, that's not how Muslims operate. So when you operate as a muhsin, opportunities come your way over and over and over, and you'll see. It gravitates towards you. This is Allah's sunnah in this world. All right. So I have a bit of a tangent here. And honestly, I think it's an important one. It might be a little bit controversial too, but I think it's good to have this conversation. On the note of taking advantage of opportunities, on the note of putting yourself out there, or presenting your talents, or in that general note, which Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam did several times. Don't forget, it comes up very soon in the surah where he tells them, "Ij'alni ala khaza'in al-ard," right? Inni hafidhun alim. He says, when he finally gets to the king, he says, "Oh, put me in charge of the treasury. Put me in charge of like the crops and so on." So he's presenting himself yet again. This happens several times in the surah. Despite him being so humble, several times he realizes I have to step up, right? So this is a theme in the surah. So here's a tangent on that note, but I think it's beneficial. Now, of course, I have to give a disclaimer. It must be understood properly, and this is a conversation mainly for the older, young people here. So probably in your 20s. I'm not, this doesn't apply to people under the age of their 20s. The idea of presenting yourself or making yourself available or letting yourself be known, I think it applies not just like we said to the like work, the examples we gave, work and school and opportunities, even marriage. And this, like I said, it can be controversial, especially in our era. But I'll give you examples from our heroes, our salaf, the pious people ahead of us. First example, of course, is the wife of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. We talked about the story a couple of, a year or two ago, but very brief summary is that Prophet Musa alayhi salam was a refugee, ran away from Egypt. They wanted to kill him. Shows up in a new land. He has nothing, literally just the clothes on his back. And he sees two women unable to get water for their sheep because they're being crowded by men who are not polite and they're not being of noble character. And he, being homeless and having nothing, he decided, I have to help these women. They're just standing there. They're being oppressed. They're being wronged. So he went, and he was a very strong man, Prophet Musa alayhi salam. He went and he got water for their sheep and made sure that all their sheep drank. And then they got home. And by the time they got home, their father was an elderly man, so he couldn't do this task. In that culture, it was the man's duty to go and get water for the sheep and so on. But their father was elderly, and they had no other men in their family, so they had to step up to the plate and take it, and it was hard for them. So they got home early that day, quite earlier than they usually do, and their father asked them what happened, and they said, "Oh, there was a man who did it on our behalf." So one of the daughters, and Allah mentions this in the Quran, she said to her father, "Ya abati istajir, inna khayra man istajart al-qawiyyu al-amin." She said, "Oh, my father, hire this man, because the best type of person to hire is somebody who is strong, capable, and trustworthy, a person of integrity." So the scholars mention in this ayah when the father ended up hiring Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and he married him to his daughter, to that same daughter who had praised him earlier. And there's a whole lot more to that story. However, my point with the story is that she was living in an area where it was very slim picking. It was not a lot of good men present. And she saw an opportunity. A man came from nowhere. Now, he didn't have the traditional criteria. He didn't have the finances and the house and the whatever, right? But she saw hafidun, she saw that he was qawiyun amin. He was a man of strength and capability and integrity. And she said, oh, my father, hire this man, let him come to our farm. So we, keep a closer eye on this guy. She took an opportunity presented itself, and she took advantage of it, which is non-traditional typically, right? The woman is not the one who will present, make herself available for an opportunity, but she didn't want the opportunity to slip her by. So this was something that Allah presented in the Quran. A second example is the story of our mother Khadija radiallahu anha. Famously, she was the one who made it known to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that she was available for marriage, right? And she didn't do it directly. She used one of her servants to let him know, and then he officially and formally requested her hand. But she was the one who initiated the contact and made it known to him that she was interested in marriage with him. Now, this is not the standard, obviously. However, nobody can ever deny something that our mother Khadija radiallahu anha did. She saw a opportunity and she didn't want to let it slip by, right? And the third example is the story of Umar radiallahu anhu, when his daughter Hafsa radiallahu anha, it was the 3rd year after Hijrah to Medina, her husband, who was a good Sahabi, passed away. And after the iddah, after the waiting period, Umar radiallahu anhu himself went to Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, and he told him, I offer you my daughter's hand in marriage. And Uthman respectfully declined, which hurt Umar radiallahu anhu, and he was not, he was taken aback by that. But he said, okay, alhamdulillah. And then he went to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and he offered him his daughter's hand in marriage. And Abu Bakr also declined. He didn't give him an answer. And that actually hurt Umar radiallahu anhu even more. He felt like, this was shocking to him. He thought it was a sure thing to go to his closest friends in that way. So in fact, he was so hurt by this that he went to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to complain. Like their behavior was completely off-putting, and it was just not what he expected whatsoever. They're allowed to decline, obviously, but it just was completely out of the ordinary, not what he expected whatsoever. So, he was hurt, and he complained to his close friend, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when he went to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he received the shock of his life, because he complained. He said, I went to Uthman, offered him Hafsa's hand in marriage, and he declined. I went to Abu Bakr. He didn't even give me the dignity of a straight response. So he was very offended by that. And then, what do you think the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied with? He told him he requested Hafsa's hand in marriage himself, and gave Umar radiallahu anhu one of the happiest moments of his life. And he obviously informed Hafsa, and it was the happiest moment of her life as well. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam married Hafsa bint Umar, and she became a noble mother of the believers. So then Uthman and Abu Bakr came to Umar and said, we know that we hurt you with what we did, but we had heard the Prophet ﷺ mention that he was interested in marrying Hafsa, and you put us in a very tough spot, because number one, we heard him say it ﷺ, but when you came to us to offer her in marriage, it's very obvious that he hasn't talked to you yet. So we're not going to spill the secret ourselves. If he hasn't said it yet, we're going to wait until he says it. So we had to stay quiet on that note. And obviously we couldn't accept on our behalf, because we knew that he wanted to marry her sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we got put in a tough spot. So we did not intend to hurt you in that way, but it just happened to happen. So of course he forgave them, and he was overjoyed anyway that Allah granted her the best husband ever. So that's a third example of something that in our era would be completely non-conventional. A father looking for a husband for his daughter, right? It's usually the other way around. But then we end up in a problem in our era. I think this problem is very pronounced in our era. The people who are practicing Muslims, the people who keep their Islamic boundaries, halal boundaries, more, I think, than ever, there's just no ways to meet. Because we stay away from the haram opportunities that all other people do, you end up having no opportunities, and you don't even know the people in your community of marriageable age. Again, I'm talking to people who are of marriageable age, who are, who not talking to the teens. You got some years, to put in the work first. But those who are of marriageable age, it's a problem. It's a epidemic in our era, and we have to start fixing that. So honestly, this goes back. I said it's a bit of a tangent, but it goes back to the concept of it's okay to make yourself known. It's okay to make your skills or your presence or your talents or so on known, obviously in a halal way. But there's nothing that does not contradict sincerity. that does not contradict good behaviors and good manners. Nobody can accuse Khadija radiallahu anha of having ill manners, or the wife of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, or so on and so forth. So obviously it must be done with tact and it must be done with wisdom, but it's about time that we understood that it does not contradict sincerity, it does not contradict good manners, and so on and so forth. Obviously, I'll put one last caveat. You should not be the person who only ever does good things because you want to be known or seen. That's terrible. That is insincere, and that does not bring any barakah. However, making yourself present in the place gatherings of good people, making yourself known to the good people, taking the opportunity to make your interests known if you have somebody particularly that you're interested in. If you do it in a halal way, I think that it's about time that we understand that this is something that Allah has permitted. Wallahu a'lam, of course. So I will say one more thing. I want to continue the ayat, but khalas, our time is up and I want to respect your time. We'll have some questions, but I'll say one last thing about when Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam said, you'll have 7 years of abundance. And he said, during these 7 years, we must save إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِمَّا تَأْكُلُونَ. We must, he said, تَزْرَعُونَ سَبَعَ سِنِينَ دَأَبًا. So he said, you're going to work really hard for 7 years with abundance, like our crops will grow. So number one, we're working hard. Number two, we're actually getting results in abundance. But he said, in those 7 years, we need to store most of the food. إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِمَّا تَأْكُلُونَ. Most of the food we have to store it away despite having abundance. We have to eat a little bit. Then will come 7 years of hardship with drought, which we will eat everything we've stored. We're actually going to go use up all of our stores in the next 7 years. And then on the 15th year, abundance will come back. So we have a long journey. And unless we start planning ahead from now, we're going to be in real trouble for those second 7 years. So I really felt a personal connection with this ayat. First of all, because the concept of planning ahead, especially if it's several years away, is the hardest thing ever, right? Agreed? How many of us, when you finally start making some money, you just want to use it? You have, okay, now I want to have some luxuries, I want to get a good car, I want to get this, I want to get that. Savings is the last things on your mind, because when the good times are here, you think they last forever. And he told them, we're going to have 7 years of good times. So they could have started getting lazy and said, come on, man, we can't start working for now. But the wisdom of, if bad times are coming, if difficulties coming, you need to plan way ahead. And you need to be planning when the times are still easy. When people call you crazy or you're cheap or this or that, like Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, he's building the ark for years and years and years. They're saying, this guy's crazy. These people are crazy. There's no flood coming. But eventually they were wrong, and the people who were building the ark, building the safety net, were safe. I believe, this is a personal opinion, it's what I've observed about the world today. I believe we are in those 7 years of abundance in our era today. And I believe the 7 years of the number is obviously not exact. I believe the 7 years of hardship are on the way. Wallahu a'lam. I think the abundance that we experience in our life today, you go to the water fountain, you turn it on, you could leave that thing on for an hour. It doesn't stop, right? Water, just unlimited cold or hot water, fresh water. I think that is not something that our parents, one generation ago, they didn't have that growing up. So there were, what you know today, unlimited electricity, unlimited heat, unlimited air condition, fruits of all seasons at all times. You could go get watermelon now at the store. It's not the season for watermelon. It's winter. Right? You can get a tropical fruit. You can get mangoes. Mangoes don't grow in New York. Mangoes don't grow in below zero weather. But we live in a very easy time. Everything's available at all times, comfort and luxury. I don't believe that this is going to last. Wallahu a'lam. All the signs point towards that. So I believe that the mindset of a young man and a young woman in our era needs to be of those 7 years of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. He said, you're going to have a lot of abundance, but we need to keep in mind that abundance doesn't last forever. So it's a very poignant. Allah didn't mention this dream and this story for no reason, right? There's wisdom to be extracted from it. Allahu alam, to whatever extent we can apply it to our lives. But whenever you have abundance, and Ibn Rajab mentioned it, which Sheikh Shinawi mentioned in this book, whenever you have abundance, you need to reflect on the fact that it doesn't last forever. And whenever you have difficulties, like 7 years of hardship, you have to reflect on the fact that it also does not last forever. So everyone in everybody's life, they will experience both. So if you've only had comforts and ease and luxuries, then understand that there will come a time in your lifetime that the opposite will be there, and the more prepared you are, the better suited you will be, as Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam said. If you are wise during the time of abundance, you will be safe during the time of hardship. And if you are not, then you will be completely ruined. And you guys know that famous story, the fable of the the ant and the grasshopper. If people are familiar with that story, it's the same concept. So reflect on that and see if you see any parallels in the world that we see today. With that said, inshallah, we'll have to continue next time with